Welcome to Wedding Day Podcast with your hosts, Sonja Babich, CEO of Iron Diamond Media, a leading wedding resource featuring 7 localized wedding brands across the country.
Hi everybody, Sonja here with Wedding Day Podcast. We are in 440 Elm, a beautiful historic venue here in Long Beach, California. I'm sitting next to my co-host, Amanda Holder, publisher of California Wedding Day. And we are thrilled to actually have our hosts who are hosting us today, 440 Elm, Vijay and Elizabeth, also owners of Bite Catering Couture. Elizabeth actually started the company back in 2007, and then 2020 they decided to buy a historic venue and have that venture. So hi guys, thank you for hosting us today and being on the podcast. We're thrilled to have you. Yeah, we're so excited to also hear your story, which I want to dive into why you named your business Bite Catering Couture.
Sure. So Bite Catering Couture, as you said, I started it in 2007. I was actually, I sort of had a funny background of having gone to Barnard College and then French Culinary Institute. I sort of stress-baked my way through culinary school, as we like to say. And I was really always drawn to the idea of kind of like, small, beautiful tasting menus and bites, which is still sort of part of our philosophy today. But when I was thinking about a name, I knew that I wanted Bite to be a part of it. So Bite Catering made sense, and I said it's alphabetically at the top of the list. And then I was thinking about kind of the idea of things that are like precious and handmade and beautiful and thematic. And that really took me into sort of the fashion idea that when you're going after or you're interested in a high-end fashion brand, that you have kind of 3 options walking into a store or a studio. There's the little keychain that you can buy at checkout. That's where they get you. There's sort of the off-the-rack little black dress that's sort of made for a more general audience, or there's the couture line that's going to be completely custom and off the runway. So I really liked that idea of things that we do are custom, they're thematic, they're beautifully presented, and really special. There's something handmade in everything that we do.
That is amazing. And Vijay, when did you enter the scene with Bite Catering?
So I've been bouncing around. I like to say that I was shanghaied into the event industry by my wife. And so what happened was I started off as a physician, then I became a strategy consultant, and then I went out on my own. And so I was doing strategy consulting maybe 6 months out of the year, and then I had 6 months to work on projects, and I did tech things and analytic things, and then I looked at her business and said they need more tech and analytic things, and so somehow I got kind of drawn in. And then to Elizabeth's point, in 2020, during the pandemic, we had to figure out why this business should exist. And so we kind of said, is this let's get out of it and move somewhere else with lower taxes and, have a different life? Or do we kind of fight for this thing and go all in? And
it was like my heart and my passion.
That's our motion. It was like, in the movie where the chips are on the table and they do the big, we did it together, okay.
All in.
Yeah.
So how did you find 440 Elm?
I mean, it was the time. So this is a COVID special where event venues were going out of business, right? And so no one was looking. And this church, at this point, it was a church. Churches were also going out of lockdown. Their congregations were shrinking. They were also going out of business. And so you had 2 sectors where things were going out of business and no one was really looking. And so that gave us the opportunity to, work on a project that otherwise we never would have gotten, a sniff at. They would have gone way before. And, and so with this, we walked in and, I think anyone who comes to California Wedding Day or comes, here for a wedding tour, people walk in, their jaw drops. We've got 30-foot ceilings. We've got chandeliers from the 20s. We've got all this cool stuff from 1913, right? And so it was all there.
Glass windows.
2-story stained glass windows.
There was tile.
So that wasn't there yet.
Marble. Well, I love it. Good job.
And so, but we walked in and, the paint was kind of peeling and the place clearly had not been maintained in 50 years. It had some serious deferred maintenance, but you can see the bones. Yeah. And so we kind of walked in and fell in love and, just said, we're going to give it a go.
We're all in. And now you actually have your executive kitchen here, right? Your bike.
Yeah, our catering kitchen is located in West LA, and then we have sort of a build out here that we're planning as sort of our next stage to bring us more into Long Beach and Orange County, which we're very excited about.
Yeah,
and we're very lucky that we have neighbors next door that run large commercial kitchens, so we can make use of their kitchens. So it's been a great sort of welcome to the neighborhood, and it's cool as a off-premise caterer. You're just so used to like going to your client. You're not so much thinking about the neighborhood that you're in, because our neighborhood for any given day is going to change. So it's been neat with Elm, I think, to sort of feel more a part of the community. People are really looking at us as something like we can really contribute and be involved with local organizations, local charity. And I think have sort of that a connection that I don't think you get naturally as a caterer, that tends to be a little bit more insular with a commercial kitchen. So that's been a really exciting journey and shift in the business and sort of our interaction, I think, with the city. So,
and as a business, which all wine professionals are businesses, right? Is that you need to be excited about your next chapter, the next stages, right? You can't just keep being mediocre. You gotta keep challenging yourself to be greater and better and keep that bucket full. So with just Bite Catering, when you start that journey with a wedding couple, being more of that couture experience, how do you help paint that picture? How do you get to know what their palette is?
yeah.
Right?
And I know I'm maybe a little old school, but I really have to talk to you before I can put together a proposal for you.
Which we experience with the
stuff.
Yeah.
Which can be hard. There's general definitely some intimidation around being on the phone, but I really start really any client journey. I mean, I think there's probably more of an emotional connection with clients who are getting married or having those kind of big life social events. But it's understanding like what's your story, what's most important to you, what's going to make this be the most reflective of you that we can make it. What are your concerns? What are your fears? There's so much that you can do through food and hospitality and experience, because hospitality is the part of an event that people are going to remember the most. How they felt, how the staff made them feel, how the food tasted. What was that interaction like? So, I think we have some fun stories, like especially with our couples, of like, what's a fun date story that we can tell you for your food? What's a part of your story that we can tell through your food? We've got a great couple in August too. We're dating in Chicago, and they were both going through medical school, and they had really, really late, they were getting out of the hospital super late at night. So they went to a place for chicken pot pie that had happened to be open late night as their date place. So we're doing a late night snack of chicken pot pie to kind of like reflect that. So
great.
I think as you can tell those stories, it just makes it so much more meaningful.
Yeah, and personal. It's those personal touches.
I mean, I think like I see a number of people when they come on their tours and they ask kind of about our food and they say, well, what does the chicken look like? What does the fish look like? And so from our perspective, once they talk to Elizabeth, if they're still there, like we've done something wrong. It should go from a product to really an experience and a memory and kind of something reflective of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved how you said the service. A lot of that isn't highlighted enough to ask questions. What's the service of hospitality going to be like on my wedding day? Like that's part of one of the major interactions is the bartender, the serving staff who's cleaning your plate. Like those are not things that a couple usually thinks about.
No, but they're so important to the overall experience, not only for the couple, but for the guests.
Yes. And what's the culture of your service? Like, this is like an old restaurant. It doesn't exist anymore. But I remember my teenage years going to my first expensive restaurant with my parents. And my parents are more formal. It was Les Panos in New York, very famous French restaurant. And that first experience was really interesting because they paired us with this older, very formal waiter who was going to be great for like my parents who were paying the bill. And then I remember maybe 4.5 years later, going back to Les Pinos with a boyfriend, and they paired us with a much younger, more relaxed waiter that was going to be more in line with us. So I think there's a lot of that, like what level of service do you want? How do you want your guests to feel? Do you want a warmer engagement? So we really kind of think about that in terms of, we say hospitality first. Like my training was French culinary, and then also Thomas Keller's restaurant, Union Square in New York. Danny Meyer. Oh my God, I want to say that again. Oh yeah, that's okay. Sorry. My training was Danny Meyer in New York at Union Square Cafe. So very focused on hospitality, very focused on the guest experience, and how do you really, shape that to get sort of, not just have a wonderful food experience, but also kind of elicit that emotional connection.
So I know that they will maybe share exactly like, this is the kind of experience that we want. It's probably similar to a tour when they come and they say, I'm going to have 300 guests, but they only have 150, right? So what are like key things when you ask about like the service and hospitality experience that you look in their response to be like, they're saying this, but they really want this? Or what's a red flag too?
Yeah,
Right?
I've always kind of put myself in a teacher's hat. That's my kind of persona when I'm speaking to a couple, and it's really not fair. You kind of you get engaged and you're expected to throw the hugest dinner party of your life, right? It's an event, and
It's a lot of pressure.
even people who plan events are overwhelmed by planning their own weddings. So there's a lot going on. So much of it is education. Like I'll really take them through. Some clients honestly feel a buffet is going to be the best experience for my guests. We're going to need more variety. It's not going to work in a 10-inch plate, if we're doing a plated experience, and it's going to be more free-flowing, so that works best, versus I really have this idea of a much more formal black and white service, and I need that elegance of plated service. So it's kind of educating them on, well, what does that look like? What does that translate to in terms of staffing, timing, those kinds of things. Sometimes it's, we're all into that high level of service. And sometimes there are ways that you can kind of finesse that, and educating them about it, like giving them, maybe we do a plated dinner with a family style kind of entree or something along those lines to sort of, work the numbers as well, because that's an important part of it. You can't kind of educate into the dark and not take into account a couple's budget at that level.
Speaking of budget, actually, it's been a good topic amongst a lot of wedding professionals to start really communicating budget. And it can be a variety, from here, and we're in California, which can be different in Minnesota and Nebraska. But what would you tell a couple on average to start with per head, just for a minimal good experience, right?
Sure.
With food and beverage?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we really start with our website. We actually follow that line of being as transparent as we can be.
I think it's really tough. So, I think a lot of wedding professionals, there's the kind of the thought that they hide prices because they're trying to be tricky. I think the reality is that a lot of people don't show their prices up front because they don't really know what you want.
Right.
And there's such a wide range that they don't want to be misleading.
Right.
And so I think that's the eternal challenge of
Experience.
how do you kind of create a great experience? How do you kind of communicate all this stuff without a conversation, not knowing who you are?
Right.
Or what you're kind of coming in with. And so it's kind of, these things are so different, and cultural expectations across the map can be so different that I think it's hard to kind of communicate that sometimes you're this, but sometimes you're that, but it depends.
Right.
And so for us, one of the challenges having a venue that can hold a 400-person wedding is, we do micro weddings here, but only a few months out, and they're going to look very different than a 400-person wedding. And so how do we kind of show those two things at the same time to people that are looking for different things? I think that's kind of the challenge that you see. We're starting to work with technology to get there. We think some of these LLMs might get us there at some point, the ChatGPTs of the world.
Yeah.
But right now they still hallucinate. And, if they give you the wrong answer, then that's really not all that helpful.
Yeah.
They're still having trouble with math.
But it just goes back to like, your culture needs, your experience needs, how you get the food too. Like catering background too, like who can give me that special item to make that cultural dinner, and it may cost a lot more, but you can get it, right? And how you can get like certain distributor, right? Food distributor, to bring it in, or maybe your contract that you have with that food distributor doesn't carry that item, right? And all the food safety that goes with it as well, right?
And we try to be flexible along those lines because we understand like certain things like you just can't replicate. You need to source it or bring it in. So we do our best to work with couples. And I think like it's part of our company values is that we're transparent and that conversation maybe looks a little bit different with a client, but kind of saying, how are you thinking about this? Where are you guys right now? We're thinking kind of here, and that at least allows for the conversation. Okay, well, that's great. I can do a starting point there, and if I can't have that conversation up front and sort of set appropriate expectations.
It sets the tone and gives direction as the conversation continues and dives into a little bit more detail.
So I think, one of the things that we're seeing is that a lot of the more mass market websites are training people to ask for a price quote and packages. And so, I think that works fine if you have a very set and limited kind of offering. One of the challenges that we face is as you go kind of more into the premium or the luxury end of the market, is that you don't have those set constraints, right? And so I think we're trying to accommodate kind of that balance by using more of like a starting point kind of mentality of saying like, we can be this at this part of the spectrum, we can be this at this part of the spectrum, we can be this at this part of the spectrum. And so there's kind of this wide range.
Yeah.
And let's talk about kind of where you want to jump off and kind of start to have that conversation.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, let's kind of shift gears here with your journey with getting a historic venue, which it is very common for caterers to have venues. And so congrats on getting your first venue as a caterer too. But like the journey of being a historic venue, there's a lot more paperwork and patience to get your dream, right? Like how long has that journey been for you guys with opening up 440 Elm?
Yeah, so this actually started, we saw the property the first time at the end of 2020. And we didn't get our business license issued until June of 2024. So that has been kind of the journey. One thing that was really helpful along the way is we did pick up a property that went bankrupt and kind of was in the interim of between kind of being operational and then kind of turning into an apartment building. And so we got to kind of experience kind of being venue operators for a couple of years kind of under that kind of rubric. And that I think I'd recommend that to anybody kind of thinking about kind of doing their own venue is, have a lower kind of pressure, a lower cost kind of place to, gain that experience, build your contracts, learn how to sell kind of those types of things, because it's a very different thing than catering.
Very different. Very different. And what makes this, when in general, a historic venue? Like the word historic, when you're researching your perfect venue, why is it important to say historic?
Well, so I think historic means that you are going to get ambiance and character that you couldn't get in a modern building. And so, very technically, like there are things that are in our building that you couldn't build them that way anymore. Right? The building code doesn't allow for it. What you tend to see with buildings of certain eras, and people fall in love with kind of different kind of types of buildings. Like our building was built in 1913. We had a master architect that built it. So in California, if you didn't have a great architect, a lot of the buildings fall down, right, from earthquakes. And so the ones that kind of stand are generally the nicer kind of looking ones, right? So one thing that you can see with historic building is usually it's that somebody thought it was worth preserving.
Right.
It's not just old, it's also has some elements that are really grand, unique, interesting, authentic.
And good bones, like you said.
Yeah. And, so for us, like we have this building that was built by a master architect named Elmer Gray, who built a lot of the buildings kind of in this area, the Pasadena Playhouse, the Occidental College. He built this one at the same time he built the Beverly Hills Hotel. And so, you get these kind of architects that kind of go on these projects. And I think, one of the things that you'll see with a historic building, especially if you have the word landmark kind of attached to it, is that there's a significance that this was something that the community thought was worth preserving.
Yeah.
As, a good snapshot of kind of the best of the work of that time.
Yeah. Wow. And it's on the registry because it
it says historic, right?
So it's not if it doesn't say landmark. So you can have historic districts, you can have historic buildings, and then landmarks are the ones where they have that recognition that either the community, the state, or nationally, they've gone through a process that people said this is worth preserving, and there's certain kind of requirements that go with that.
So what was the moment though that you're like, I'm all in on this one? Like, how did you two know that this was your next?
Probably the financing, right? That was the moment.
Well, I mean, I think
You realized what was possible.
yeah, so this one we walked into and we were like, there's no way in heck, right? And then,
Well, you coming in downstairs, there was nothing to write home about. They had already kind of stripped out. It was just that open foyer. We could see the chandeliers, obviously, were beautiful from the moment you enter. And then I think we came upstairs and you walk into the sanctuary, and it was funny because it was built stadium style originally. So that floor was actually sloped down like it would be for a concert stadium with the pews built in to seat around 900 people. And I just kept like, your eyes are drawn up in this room because of the chandeliers, because of that 30-foot coffered ceiling, and just because of the light is like its own character in our building. Like no matter where you go, there's light. And I just sort of remember standing at the back of the room and kind of going like this. Like and blocking out the floor, the seating, and just thinking, this is the best ballroom I've ever walked into. Like, this is a ballroom. This is like, it is what it can be. And I think for me, that's always held significance, that it's gone from one place of very celebration to continuing to be a celebration, even though we're not using it. Well, actually, we do have a church actually renting us right now.
Yeah.
But, it's
Which is common in venues.
yes,
Very common.
yes,
Right.
yes.
You get to continue the legacy in a
There's that
different
legacy.
way,
Yeah,
you know?
I think Vijay was a little bit different. So it's there's so few places, especially being in the event industry, where you walk in and it takes your breath away,
yes.
right? And so we walked in and it was falling apart, and it still took our breath away. And so I think like that to me was just that moment of like if we can do this, we should. I don't think we can, but let's see if we can. And then the other thing that happened is that, I saw her breath get taken away, and I could see her kind of like, just the synapses just started firing.
And then he looked at me and said, "You're gonna need me to deal with this, aren't you?" And I said, "Yep."
So
Okay, that's why you're a T.
the way that I kind of remember it is more of the like, I was like, "You love it." She's like, "Yep." You said, "I'm gonna figure it out." Yep.
And he's like a pit bull. He's like a pit bull in the best way. Like when he gets into something and he knows that I care about something, he will just latch and not let go until he's figured it out, which has not made him friends all the time, but it gets a lot done.
Yeah. Hey, it is what it is. And you're passionate about something, you'll go get it, right?
And I think that's been the other thing that's been interesting about coming over to the venue side and taking care of something historic is I'm normally a bull in a china shop. Like I'm a disruptor, right? And so to become a steward, I had to put on a very different hat and a very different persona and like start to think about just what I was doing very differently, because it is a very different thing. Now you're fighting for something that's been here for a long time that you want to have be here for a lot longer.
Right.
And that's very different than changing everything.
Yeah, and bringing a beautiful venue back to the community that everybody can love and bond with you two as well, right? Because they'll be becoming like a little diamond in town.
Yeah, so I think that part's been interesting. And I think for anyone who's thinking about opening a venue, that would be where I'd probably have the most advice. Is that it was actually easier for us to reopen what I would call an inferior venue that had a track record because people knew it, they'd had parties there, they'd been there for a long time, like it had this momentum.
Right.
And if you're starting with a place like this where it was a church that had a small congregation, right? There weren't even the people across the street like didn't know this was here.
Yeah.
And then it didn't have a ballroom, so literally it wasn't here.
Yeah.
Right? Like what you can do with it now just didn't exist. And so that's starting from a cold start. And so just be aware that kind of something that you're used to with momentum is very different than a cold start.
Right.
Well, last question. What are you two most excited about, like combining Bite with 440 Elm? Like, where are you most excited in like a year? Like, what do you see, like that forecast vision that will fill your cup?
I'm gonna let you go first. Do you have an answer?
So I think for me, I think there's obviously the things that we'll do that are beautiful. And I think what's been interesting for us is as a catering company, there's so many good ones in LA. That this has raised our profile quite a bit, and that's been really fun. It's raised her ambition quite a bit because she went from wanting to stay boutique and a little bit more kind of small and selective to now having to do bigger events because this is a bigger space. We interact with different people. They want to do different things with him, right? And so I think what's really exciting is just seeing like how that's going to elevate both our creativity and kind of our ability to do different things. So like we expanded into Indian menus and Middle Eastern menus and kind of like all kinds of things we never had any reason to be in before. And then also it's allowed us to talk with planners that then work at other venues. And so we're kind of starting to interact with, you know, the best of California Wedding Day, some of the people that are in Over the Moon. And so kind of seeing like what people at that level, how they operate and how they get the best out of us, I think has been really interesting. And it's different than working with the people who want to be a little bit more controlling, right? Like those folks just take everything to the next level, and it's been kind of really fascinating to watch and kind of be a part of.
Yeah, and I'd follow on what Vijay said, not just like planners, but also other venues. Like I think there's like a really nice synergy and collaboration because not every couple is going to be a fit for some other venues, and not every couple or event's going to be a fit for me. So there's a natural synergy and relationship building in the event community that sometimes you don't see amongst caterers in the same way for obvious reasons. But you do see it amongst venues, so that's really fun. And then we also get to go off and work in some of those venues as a catering company. So that's been really, really fun and exciting. And yeah, I do think it's not every day that I'm proposing for a modern Indian wedding as an off-premise caterer, because naturally those clients will go to caterers that specialize. So it's really forced in the best way my team to sort of cycle up in terms of our knowledge and learning. And I'm lucky that I have a really strong culinary team that can do that.
Spread their wings a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you two for being with us today. And I feel honored that we're part of your journey too, and get to celebrate our biggest event with California Wedding Day here this year in 2025. And we truly celebrate all your hard work, and it hopefully feels a little bit more real when you have all those amazing wedding professionals in one space.
We're excited to see how those ideas come to life for the great ones.
Yes, sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. It's gonna take their breath away.
Yes. We can't wait. Well, thank you everybody for tuning into Wedding Day Podcast. We'll see you next time. See you, bye.